There's widespread damage at the United States Embassy in Syria, where a pro-government mob staged an hours-long attack, with some demonstrators scaling a fence and managing to get inside the compound. They broke windows, knocked out security cameras, and painted graffiti on the walls. Our foreign affairs correspondent Jill Doherty is getting new details for us over at the State Department. What else are you hearing, Jill?
And also, there's a diplomatic side to this, Wolf, and that is it's really the furthest that any U.S. official has gone so far. Secretary of State Hillary Clinton saying the President Assad has lost legitimacy. That came after the Syrian government apparently retaliated for a controversial visit by the U.S. ambassador to a Syrian town last Friday that was the scene of a major crackdown on demonstrators. The State Department calls it a mob. 300 people attacking the U.S. Embassy in Damascus. Some got over the walls onto the embassy roof. They broke windows, spray painted, knocked out security cameras. Meanwhile, 2 blocks away, another crowd made it over the walls of the ambassador's residence, broke windows, spray painted, threw food. The attacks, the State Department charges, appeared to be incited by a Syrian TV station heavily influenced by the government. And they came after crowds threw stones, eggs, and tomatoes at the embassy over the weekend. The violence appeared to be retaliation for U.S. Ambassador Robert Ford's provocative visit to the city of Hama, where he was greeted by anti-government protesters. Sunday, Ford demanded the Syrian government protect the embassy and its staff as international law requires. For Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the attacks against the U.S. embassy were the last straw with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
From our perspective, he has lost legitimacy. Let me also add that if anyone, including President Assad, thinks that the United States is secretly hoping the regime will emerge from this turmoil to continue its brutality and repression, they are wrong. President Assad is not indispensable, and we have absolutely nothing invested in him remaining in power.
Now, Secretary Clinton stopped short of calling for Assad to step down, but she also made no secret of the fact that the U.S. does not want him to continue in office. Nevertheless, the U.S. continues to say that it's up to the Syrians themselves to decide whether he stays or whether he goes. Wolf?
Jill Doherty, thank you. The attack in Damascus, as well as stalled Middle East peace talks, were also part of my interview with the former British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Can you believe that the regime there apparently authorized hundreds of anti-American protesters storming the U.S. Embassy in Damascus?
I'm afraid in a way I can believe it. I mean, I think the regime there is increasingly desperate, but what they've got to understand is that it won't work in the end. I mean, the lesson from all around this region is that unless regimes are prepared to engage in a process of evolution, which is seen by their people as legitimate, then in the end they're going to be at risk and probably swept away.
Because you met with the president of Syria, Bashar al-Assad. Should the international community deal with him the way it's been dealing over these past several months with Muammar Gaddafi of Libya?
It's not possible to take the same action. I mean,
Why?
Well, it's a good question, but I think because there is no real consent for military action in respect of Syria, I mean, there's just, you wouldn't get the same support.
Rhetorically, just saying, you must go?
Well, I think we're at that stage, frankly.
I haven't heard the United States government say about Bashar al-Assad what it has said about Muammar Gaddafi.
Because I think there's still a residual hope somewhere that because he's often talked the language of reform and talk the language of major change within his country. The trouble is it never seems to happen. And in the end, a regime such as the Assad regime in Syria, it's not sustainable. And I think the key thing from all that has happened in the Arab Spring is to realize that if something rationally and logically isn't sustainable, then the fact it's being temporarily sustained doesn't mean it's going to carry on being so.
So do I hear you say, Tony Blair, say that it's time for Bashar al-Assad to step down?
It's not my place.
Is that your personal opinion?
My place, but I can't see how the current situation with him in charge is sustainable.
So you think he should go?
Well, I mean,
you're Tony Blair. You're a private citizen right now.
Absolutely, and I'm trying to be diplomatic about it. But I can't, and it's not for me, as it were, to jump ahead of what the present leaders are saying. But he's got a choice. And he's had this choice all the way through. And so far, at each stage, he's failed to make the right choice. And the choice is either to set out a process of genuine constitutional change in this country that probably will end up with a different regime.
But you're under no illusions. You don't think he's going to make that real, bold gesture for democracy and reform and change? You think it's too late for him?
I think it is, frankly, yeah.
All right, well, let's move on and talk a little bit about why you're here in Washington. Is it too late to get the Israeli-Palestinian peace process going? Because a lot of us who have watched this story unfold for so many years, we're pretty depressed right now.
No, here it's not too late. And actually, strangely, because of the changes in the region, the convulsions that are happening, change in Egypt, changes you say in Syria now, there actually is an opportunity, if we're smart and intelligent about it, to put together a set of principles that can guide a framework for negotiation.
Will you come up with a blueprint, if you will, to try to jumpstart these negotiations?
I'm not sure it's going to be possible to do that right tonight, but we are in the process of discussing how it is you would set out a framework of principles that would make this a credible negotiation, bring the parties back to the negotiating table. And President Obama, when he set out in his speeches here in America a short time ago, the types of principles that would allow us to make progress in this, I think we've got to take that.
So is that the basis for...
Yeah, I think that's got to be the basis.
What the President said in the State Department speech, pre-67 lines with mutually agreed land swaps, that's the blueprint.
I think the blueprint is, yes, to recognize you're not going to go back to precisely the same borders as 67 because of the changes that have taken place, but 67 borders with mutually agreed negotiated swaps is obviously the right way forward. But then you've got security issues. Israel obviously will want to protect its security, and particularly with the changes in the region will be even more anxious about that. You've got Jerusalem, absolutely vital issue for both parties, and of course refugees.
Prime Minister, thanks very much and good luck.
Thank you.